All right, I've been putting this topic off actually for quite some time because it's such a vast topic on such a simple point, and it curtails to everything that's going on right now in the world, politically, environmentally, that air of attitude and hatred that we're all kind of experiencing right now. Um, I want to talk about what's happening and why he said this quote. Now, first of all, the common narrative is that Oppenheimer, who was working on the Manhattan Project, created the atom bomb as a project to stop the evil Nazis from stopping their super racist world domination ways, and this just isn't true. But that's the narrative that we have in our heads because history, the writers of history, has programmed it there. So here's the quote. I just pull up Wikipedia because it's just complete mind mush bullshit. But it's how we all kind of understand what we consider to be history. This is just normal to most people when it is not true. So I just typed in Oppenheimer, I am become death. It's the famous quote, Oppenheimer. So this is what Wikipedia says. As he witnessed the first detonation of a nuclear weapon on July 16th, 1945, a piece of Hindu scripture ran through the mind of Robert Oppenheimer. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. It is perhaps the most well-known line from the Bhagavad Gita, but also the most misunderstood. So Wikipedia will attempt to explain this verse in their anti-white hatred kind of way, because if you can't see the agenda that they want to destroy the white race by now, there might be no hope for you, because it's everywhere. It's all over the TV. It's now in our schools. It's on the news 24/7. It's all over the place. But this quote. So here's what happened in a nutshell. I'll do my best to explain in a very short period of time. So 1945 comes around, and things are just absolutely chaotic in the Second World War, and the Germans were doing actually really well. That small piece of land run by obviously the German Empire, the Third Reich, is almost conquered the world because of their genius and ingenuity, their technological advancements, and all these things. Now, the Germans created the atom bomb, but they couldn't decide on using it. They couldn't fathom using it on the world because it's such an evil weapon. So the Germans created the atom bomb along with all the UFO stuff you hear about, all true. They were geniuses in technology and the UFO stuff, geniuses in weaponry, geniuses in tactical warplay. They were geniuses in everything. And the Americans were the ones who used the atom bomb after getting it from the Germans. So here in March 1945, several months before the end of the war, the Americans bombed Berlin. This is the capital of Germany. Okay, now this is a very big faux pas in wartime. This is like an enemy coming to America and bombing Washington, right? Like there's no tactical advantage to it. There was no tactical advantage to slipping through the enemy lines and bombing the women and children. So anyways, it happened. And what happened was it opened the table for discussion for Hitler. So Hitler made a deal with the Americans after Berlin was completely destroyed to ruins. And after the bombing of Berlin, and the Americans pretty much invaded Berlin, and the rest is history. Long story short, Operation Paperclip was put in place to get all the key members of the Nazi Party out of Germany and into America, other than the 17 people which were tried the Nuremberg Code. I'm not going to get too much into that. The Nuremberg laws are not as evil as you think. It was just to propagate the German race with eugenics. It wasn't the gas stuff or any of that stuff that you think. The Nuremberg Code was just to curtail the Aryan race and getting rid of genetic misfits that were deformed and things of this nature. Anyways, so after the bombing of Berlin happened, Operation Paperclip was put in place, and it was as you see right here, Wikipedia, right? Wikipedia is the most base, ignorant explanation of historical events you'll ever get, but here's what it says. Operation Paperclip was a secret United States intelligence program in which more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians were taken from former Nazi Germany to the U.S. for government employment after the end of World War II in Europe between 45 and 59. So again, this is kind of old news to us. It's no secret that the Americans brought the Nazis over and used their genius. Now here's the kicker, though. The narrative that we all have come to accept is that the Nazis took over America. Because you have to understand the first narrative that the Nazis are the most evil people in the world, and what's happening now in America is the Nazis' fault. This is just bullshit. The Americans defeated the Nazis. The Nazis didn't conquer America. The Americans conquered Germany, and then they brought the genius of the Nazis over and took it over. And the Americans continue to do what they've always done, which is make alliances with the British and the Jews and continue their communist revolution and taking over the world. You have to understand that the Nazis were the good guys in this, and I know it's contradictory and counterintuitive to what we're taught, but this is the truth. So Operation Paperclip brought all the Nazi geniuses over and integrated, and the Americans took it. They took the atom bomb technology, and NASA was created, and they took the genius of the space program and put it into NASA. The Nazis didn't do this. The Americans did after conquering the Nazis. So anyways, I'm kind of going off course here, but my point is that I want to stay on point here. Oppenheimer is one of these people that was brought over. Oppenheimer is a German name. Now we're taught that Oppenheimer says, "I am become death, the destroyer of world," because of his American foreign accent. This is not true. This is actually a direct quote from the Bhagavad Gita. Now I personally believe, after studying all of the historical clues left in history, that these guys, the Nazis, the actual Nazis when they were conquered, came over, they must have made a deal with the Americans to put clues in the history books that have led me to finding things, people like me, because there's too many oddities. I can't talk about it in one video, but this is one such oddity which I'll explain. This is one of many. Okay. So Oppenheimer came over and they traded the technology with the Americans, and now the Americans have the technology of the atom bomb. Again, the Nazis, the Germans, did not want to destroy any other pure racial types, and they had respect for America, which I can prove. I just don't feel like it right now in his books. And he didn't have respect for Britain per se, especially not after Winston Churchill became prime minister. But Hitler had respect for the breed, the Aryan race on foreign continents, or the same continent in Europe, but on foreign continents and foreign countries all over the world. He didn't want to destroy too much of his own people. That's why he held the technology of the nuclear bomb. And the Americans just slaughtered all the Japanese with it. They didn't give a shit because they wanted to win the war. They bombed the women and children in Berlin, took the technology, and then they used the atom bomb and bombed the Japanese, and the Japanese ended the war. But General Patton, who's a pure Aryan, by the way, true patriot, he afterwards, after the end of the Second World War, he's quoted as saying that they defeated the wrong enemy, because afterwards he figured out what was going on, which is what I now know is it's too obvious for me at this point. So anyways, again, Oppenheimer created the atom bomb. Now this is a news article. I can't read it. I could on my phone earlier for some reason, but I can't read it now. It's the results of the secret Nazi breeding program. Now, actually, before I get to this, I'll explain the quote. So this is my book of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11 up here on the left, and verse 32. It's a misquote. It's a misquote of the Bhagavad Gita. Now you got to remember that the Nazis were Hindus. Now Hindu is an Aryan religion, and when you study Ariosophy and all these things, you realize that the Aryan religion, the original Aryan religion, is a bit of all over the place, right? So we get the Hindu religion, Christianity's got chunks, which is why the Bhagavad Gita ties into Christianity a lot. Buddhism is very interesting with Christianity too, because Buddhism teaches the law of karma, and Christianity teaches the law of grace. They're two opposites of the same coin. There's a lot of similarities with these religions. Now when I say Christianity, I mean the Gospels. I don't mean Christianity that's warped it over the years. I mean true Christ theology, which has been kind of watered down over the years. So anyways, these people are quoting from the Bhagavad Gita because they were Hindus, in a sense. They were sun god worshippers. And I honestly believe this guy put it in there for us to find, because the misquote is so obvious to me. It just blows me away. So Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, verse 32. And the quote is, "Time I am, the destroyer of worlds, and I have come to engage all people. Except for you, all soldiers on both sides here will be slain. This is a clue because instead of death becoming the destroyer of worlds, the narrative that we're fed is that death, well, he created the atom bomb, I am the bringer of death, I am the destroyer of worlds, my weapon, my technology. And this is not what the quote means. Time I am the destroyer of worlds, and I have come to engage all people. Except for you, all soldiers on both sides here will be slain. It is a wartime quote. Okay, it is the battle, the Mahabharata, the battle between good and evil at the end of Kali Yuga, and he's warning the Aryan people to get ready for battle because he knows the laws of nature, just like all the Nazis did. It was another clue put in history. All the things that we know the Nazis for are clues to hidden truths, and I should break down all of them, but this is a big one. So he's saying here that the destroyer of worlds is time. The Aryan race will rise up and take over the injustice in the world. We're seeing the beginning of this right now with all the people fighting against injustice. This is what the quote means. It has nothing to do at all with the atom bomb. Although he did create it, I believe that the paperclip people made a deal. The Germans wanted the nuggets to be put in history, just like the nuggets are in the Bible that the Christians haven't found yet because they're still waiting for Scotty to beam them up. There's nuggets in history, and it's natural law, and this is a pertinent one, and I'll explain further. So yeah, just back to this article. This is the New York Times I use because, again, everyone reads it. It's kind of socially acceptable. It's a normal, quote-unquote normal news article. I'm not like trying to prove a point here about finding some obscure article. So it's the title is "The Results of Secret Nazi Breeding Program" for ordinary folks, I guess. So this is what it's about. Hitler wanted to breed the Aryan race, not to start a super soldier army. I mean, how do you... With the narrative is that Hitler wanted to have breeding parties to bring about the Aryan race for super soldiers. I mean, run that through your head for a minute. The World War, lasted only a handful of years, and you're expecting what? It's a man to go from birth to 18 years old and then get in the war? That's just not true. The reason for the breeding programs was because he wanted to do what the Jews call the Diaspora. Now, the Diaspora is just a fancy word for meaning dispersion. So the narrative of the Jews is that the Jews were dispersed all over the world, and they're all waiting to get their nation back, which they got in 1948 with Israel. But the Germans kind of think differently. The Germans believe that they were under attack by the destroyers of the world, and they knew that their race was under attack by the Black Bloods, as esoteric Hitlerists call them. Anyways, so what Hitler did, he knew that he was going to lose the war. So he decided to have a breeding program to disperse the German people all over the world. I myself am actually one of them. I'm sure there's lots of people out there. You have stories like this where your grandparents fled the war and then they went to North America to live out their lives because of the war. War is ugly for anyone. But anyways, Hitler knew this, so he wanted to scatter the German people all over the world, knowing that they would rise up and fight for justice wherever they were. This is the true meaning of I can't even scroll down. This is the true meaning of the breeding programs. It had nothing to do with armies of super soldiers or anything of the sort. In fact, they wanted to recruit people from West Prussia, which is my ancient heritage bloodlines, the Teutonic lines from West Prussia, and bring them into the Third Reich as a war. They didn't want to breed new soldiers. They just wanted to breed and populate the world for what's to come at the end of the world. Again, it was not about conquering in the Third Reich during the Second World War. It was about the final war to come, which we're about to see begin soon. So I found it on my phone, and I took pictures of the article from the New York Times here. Again, so it's not to be quoted as gospel, but I want to explain what the common narrative is. Okay, so I just circled it for here. So this is just the writer of the article. This is their explanation of why the Germans spread about the race all over the world, or why they wanted to do this. And their reason is to be accepted into the Lebensborn. Now, Lebensborn just means fountain of life. So you have Lebensraum, which is a territory. Lebensraum would be like a racial territory. So Germany from 1933 to 1940 could be considered a Lebensraum. Lebensborn is the blood of that nation. When Jesus says, return to the bosom of the Father, the esoteric Hitler is taking